She was blind and sold to a CEO. But one night, a necklace unlocked a secret from their past. But before we dive into the full story, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is now. Subscribe to the channel and let's get started. The New York autumn evening pressed against the windows of Eleanor Hayes' parlor, heavy with the scent of old roses. A single lantern flickered on the mahogany table, its glow dancing across a silver necklace, sun and moon pendants glinting softly. Ethan Hayes stood rigid, his tailored suit stark against the room's faded elegance. His fingers grazed the sun pendant in his pocket, its edges worn from years of touch, a tether to a girl called Sunshine, lost to him since childhood. His grandmother Eleanor sat across, her frail frame cloaked in silk, her eyes sharp as cut glass. Weakened by age, she leaned heavily on her cane, her time short. "Ethan," she said, voice low. "She's here. The girl, Lily Vance." His jaw tightened. "This prophecy bride nonsense. It's yours, not mine." Eleanor's lips curved, a smile heavy with secrets. "Meet her, then decide." Her eyes lingered as if recalling a promise made to a lost girl years ago. The door creaked. Lily stepped in, her cane tapping softly, her blind eyes unseeing yet piercing, as if tracing the weight of his stare. Her hair, dark and loose, framed a face pale as moonlight, and her hands clutched a necklace, sun and moon pendants, identical to the one on the table. Ethan's breath caught, sharp as a blade. "Where did you get that?" His voice was ice, cutting the room's warmth. Lily's fingers trembled, touching her necklace. "It's all I have," she whispered, "from before." Before. The word hung, heavy as dusk. Ethan's mind flashed to Sunshine, her laugh, her small hand slipping from his in a crowded street, the sun pendant left behind. He stepped closer, his shadow falling over Lily. "Who gave it to you?" She flinched, her voice soft but steady. "I don't know. I was 5 when—" She paused, her lips pressing tight. "When I lost my sight, my memories." Eleanor watched, her silence a weight, her eyes flicking between them like a weaver at her loom. Her fingers brushed a sealed envelope in her pocket, words for Lily, not yet shared. Ethan's chest tightened. The necklace was no coincidence, but Lily's face, blank, unguarded, held no answers. He turned to Eleanor, his voice low. "What game is this?" "No game," Eleanor said, her gaze on Lily, soft knowing. "A promise kept." Lily's cane tapped once, a small sound in the vast room. "I don't understand," she said, her voice barely above a breath. "Why am I here?" Ethan's eyes narrowed. "You're here because she thinks you're someone." He bit back the name, Sunshine. It felt too raw, too close. Lily's head tilted as if catching a note in his tone. "Someone," she echoed, her fingers tightening on her necklace. "I'm just me." The lantern flickered, its light catching the pendants. Ethan's heart, bound by grief, recoiled. He didn't want this. Her, this marriage, this shadow of his past. But Eleanor's eyes held him, unyielding, as if she saw more than he could. "Fine," he said, his voice clipped. "We'll do this. The marriage. But don't expect more." Lily nodded, her face still, her fingers brushing her necklace as if it held her own lost light. "I don't," she said, so softly it might have been the wind. Eleanor rose, her silk rustling, her cane steadying her frail steps. "Good," she said, her voice a thread pulling tight. She moved to the door, pausing to glance at Lily, her eyes heavy with a truth unspoken. The room seemed to hold its breath, the lantern's glow fading into the shadows. Ethan watched Lily, her quiet presence a riddle he couldn't solve. Her necklace glinted, a mirror to his own, and for a moment he saw not a stranger, but a shadow from his past, half seen in dawn's light. He turned away, the weight of that thought too much to bear. A sparrow's call pierced the silence outside, faint but clear, carrying the night forward, the lantern's glow dimming as the story began to unfold. The Manhattan penthouse gleamed, its marble floors cold under Lily's cautious steps. Her cane tapped a rhythm, sharp against the city's muffled hum, as she navigated the vast, unfamiliar space. Ethan's absence was louder than the silence, his days swallowed by boardrooms, his nights by ghosts. Lily felt it, the way he avoided her, his footsteps retreating when she entered a room. The air carried his scent, cedar and steel, but never his warmth. In her room, a small sanctuary of soft linens and quiet. Lily sat by the window, her fingers tracing the sun and moon pendants at her throat. They were warm, heavy with a past she couldn't see. She hummed a tune, faint and unbidden, its notes rising like a half-remembered dream. It was a song Brenda Finch, her foster mother, had silenced with a sharp word. "Keep it hidden, girl, from those who'd know you from before the crash." The melody curled around her, and for a moment, she wasn't alone. Ethan paused outside her door, his hand on the knob, his breath catching. That song, it was Sunshine's, sung in a sunlit field, her small voice bright as the pendant at her neck. His chest tightened, the faded photograph in his study flashing in his mind. A girl with bright eyes, the sun pendant glinting, its edges worn. He'd kept it hidden, tucked in a drawer, a wound he couldn't close. He stepped back, the song too much, Lily's presence too close to a truth he wasn't ready to face. In the study, he poured a whiskey, the glass cold in his hand. The city sparkled beyond the window, indifferent to his turmoil. Sunshine had vanished on a day like this, her hand slipping from his in a crowded street. The sun pendant, all she left behind. He'd clung to it, to her, through years of pain, through Serafina Thornes' lies. Serafina, who'd claimed to be Sunshine, her words a cruel mirage. Now with Lily's necklace, her song, doubt gnawed at him. Lily, in her room, pressed the pendants to her lips, the metal cool against her skin. Brenda's voice echoed, harsh, bitter, telling her the necklace was worthless, a trinket from a life not hers, but it felt like hers, the only thing that did. She'd been 5 when the fever took her sight, her memories dissolving like mist. Brenda had raised her, if raising meant cold words and colder hands. Now in Ethan's world, Lily felt smaller, a shadow in a house too grand, a wife in name only. Ethan moved through the penthouse, his steps quick, restless. He passed the kitchen where Lily stood, her cane leaning against the counter. She reached for a glass, her fingers fumbling, the glass tipping. He caught it, his hand brushing hers, brief but sharp, like a spark in the dark. "Careful," he said, his voice low, less cold than before. Lily froze, her head tilting toward him. "Thank you," she said, her voice soft, steady. Her fingers lingered near his, her necklace glinting at her throat. Ethan's eyes flicked to it, then away, the song still echoing in his mind. He set the glass down, stepping back, the moment breaking like thin ice. "You don't need to hover," Lily said, her tone gentle, not sharp. "I manage." Ethan's jaw tightened. "I wasn't—" He stopped, the words caught. He wanted to ask about the song, the necklace, but the weight of absence held him back. "Good night," he said instead, his voice clipped, retreating to the study. Lily stood alone, the glass cold under her hand. She hummed again, the tune softer now, as if afraid to be heard. It stirred something in her, a flicker of warmth, a life before Brenda, before blindness. She didn't know what it meant, only that it felt like home. Ethan in the study opened the drawer, the photograph staring back. Sunshine's eyes, her pendant, her smile, they blurred with Lily's face, her voice, her song. He slammed the drawer shut, the whiskey untouched. The truth was there, unspoken. A song caught in the throat, but he couldn't face it, not yet. The penthouse settled into silence, the city's hum fading. Lily's cane tapped once, twice, a small sound carrying her back to her room. The melody lingered, a thread between them, fragile but unbroken, as a sparrow's shadow danced on the sill, whispering the story forward. The penthouse buzzed with Serafina Thornes' arrival, her heels clicking like a storm on the marble floor. She swept in, all charm and sharp edges, her perfume cutting through the quiet. Ethan stood by the window, his back to Lily, his fingers grazing the sun pendant in his pocket. Serafina's voice was honey, her words a calculated dance. "Ethan, darling, it's me, your sunshine." She touched her neck, a sun pendant glinting, its edge oddly sharp, unlike his own. His breath hitched, eyes locking on her, the room shrinking to her alone. Lily sat in the corner, her cane still, her blind eyes unseeing but sharp, catching the falseness in Serafina's tone. Her fingers tightened on her necklace, sun and moon pendants pressed against her palm. She said nothing, her silence a shield, but the air grew heavy, like a room thick with unspoken words. Ethan didn't notice, his gaze fixed on Serafina, her stories of a lost childhood weaving a spell. "I remember you," she said, her smile practiced. "The field, the songs, the day we were torn apart." Ethan's voice was raw. "You have her pendant." He stepped closer, hope stirring. Lily's head tilted, her lips parting, but no words came. She felt the lie, sharp as a blade. But who was she to speak? A wife in name, a stranger in his world. Seraphina's eyes flicked to Lily, dismissive, then back to Ethan. "I've searched for you," she said, her hand brushing his arm. "All these years." Ethan nodded, his heart alight, blind to the woman in the corner, her quiet presence fading against Seraphina's glow. Lily's fingers touched her necklace, her chest tight, a longing to be seen, not with eyes but with the heart. That evening, Ethan left with Seraphina, their laughter trailing like smoke. Lily slipped outside to the garden behind the penthouse, the air thick with jasmine, the city's hum a distant pulse. She sat on a stone bench, her cane resting beside her, the world dark but alive, the rustle of leaves, the cool night air, the ache of being unseen. Ethan, returning alone, paused at the garden's edge. Seraphina's words echoed, her pendant a beacon, but something faltered. He recalled Eleanor's cryptic words about the prophecy, urging him to look closer at Lily. He saw her now, her face soft, unguarded, her fingers tracing her necklace. Her quiet presence cut through him, sharper than memory. He stepped closer, his shadow falling over her. "Why do you hold it so tightly?" he asked, his voice low, less cold, a crack in his armor. Lily's head lifted. "It's the only thing that feels like me," she said, her voice a whisper, her face pale under the starlight. Ethan's eyes lingered, seeing not the blind girl he'd married, but a woman carrying a grief as deep as his own. Her words landed like starlight, delicate but heavy, shifting his gaze. He saw her anew, not a duty, not a shadow, but Lily, her truth a mirror to his pain. The necklace at her throat glinted, and for a moment, Seraphina's lies felt hollow. "You're not what I expected," Ethan said, his voice rough, unguarded. Lily's smile was small, piercing, her head tilting. "What did you expect?" she asked, her tone gentle, cutting. He didn't answer, the weight of her question too much. He turned away, the jasmine scent clinging to him. Seraphina's pendant now a question, not an answer. Lily stayed, the garden quiet, her fingers still on her necklace. She felt his gaze, brief but real, a moment where she was seen. It wasn't enough, but it was something, a crack in the dark. The city's hum faded, the jasmine heavy in the air. Ethan, inside, looked out at the garden, where Lily sat, a figure under starlight, reshaping his heart without a word. A moth's wings fluttered nearby, soft as a whisper, carrying the story forward, a truth half seen, waiting to unfold. The penthouse hummed with morning light, its cold elegance softened by the clink of dishes in the kitchen. Lily stood at the counter, her cane propped nearby, her fingers fumbling with a teacup, the porcelain slippery under her touch. Ethan, passing through, paused, his eyes catching the tremble in her hands. Without a word, he stepped forward, his hand steadying hers, the cup settling safely. Their fingers brushed, brief but electric, a spark in the quiet. "Careful," he said, his voice low, warmer than before. Lily's breath caught, her head tilting toward him. "Thank you," she said, soft but clear, her fingers lingering near his. Ethan's gaze flicked to her face, pale and open, her blind eyes somehow seeing him. The moment held, fragile as a held breath, until he stepped back, the air shifting. "You don't need my help," he said, rougher, as if to break the spell. "I manage," Lily replied, her tone gentle, a smile flickering. She set the cup down, her movements deliberate, and Ethan watched, struck by her quiet grace, the way she listened to the world, her head tilted toward the hum of the city, the chirp of a distant bird. He'd noticed her more these days, the small things, her steady hands despite her blindness, the way she hummed that tune, Sunshine's tune, in unguarded moments. It stirred him, a thread he couldn't untangle. Seraphina's voice cut through, sharp as glass, from the doorway. "Ethan, you're here." She swept in, her perfume heavy, her sun pendant glinting, a false star, its edge too sharp, nagging at his memory. Her eyes flickered with greed, her pendant a tool for Ethan's wealth. "I was just telling you about that summer, remember? The lake, the fireflies." Her words were a lure, pulling him back to a past he craved. Ethan nodded, his eyes on her, but Lily's presence lingered, a quiet weight at his side. Seraphina's tales rang hollow against Lily's truth. Lily turned away, her cane tapping softly, retreating to the window. She hummed, the melody like a half-remembered dream, its notes curling like smoke. Ethan froze, the sound piercing. Sunshine's song, unmistakable, the same one from a sunlit field, a lost day. Seraphina's voice faltered, her eyes narrowing at Lily. "What's that tune?" she asked, her tone too bright, too sharp. "Just something I know," Lily said, her voice steady, her fingers on her necklace. Ethan's chest tightened, the memory of Sunshine's voice blending with Lily's, the pendants a mirror to his own. He wanted to ask, to demand, but Seraphina's hand was on his arm, her smile a tether. "Let's go," she said, pulling him toward the door. "We have plans." Ethan hesitated, his eyes on Lily, her silhouette framed by the window, the city a blur beyond. "Later," he said, to no one, following Seraphina out. But the hum stayed with him, a thread weaving through his doubt. Lily's tune, her touch, her quiet truth, they were heavier, realer. In the kitchen, Lily stood alone, the teacup cold under her hand. The moment with Ethan, his hand on hers, lingered, warm as her necklace. She didn't know why he'd helped, why his voice had softened, but it felt like being seen, if only for a breath. She hummed again, the tune a lifeline, stirring a flicker of a life before Brenda's cold hands, before the fever stole her sight. It was hers, this song, and maybe, just maybe, it was his too. Ethan, in the car with Seraphina, ignored her chatter, his mind on Lily's face, her song, the teacup steady in their shared touch. The act, small but profound, wove into a memory. Sunshine, laughing, her small hand in his, singing that same tune. He blinked, the city flashing by, Seraphina's voice a distant hum. The necklace, the song, Lily. They were tied to Sunshine, to a truth he'd missed, unnoticed until now. Seraphina glanced at him, her smile tightening. "You're quiet," she said, her hand brushing his. He pulled away, the gesture small but sharp. "Just thinking," he said, his voice clipped, his eyes on the horizon. The doubt grew, a crack in her spell, Lily's quiet presence louder than Seraphina's lies. The city's pulse faded, the kitchen's clink echoing in Lily's mind. A clock's tick sounded nearby, faint but clear, carrying the story forward, a thread of truth waiting to unravel. The penthouse glowed with dawn's soft light, but a quiet hope warmed Lily's heart. Her hands rested on her belly, the faint swell of life within her, a secret she carried close. She moved through the kitchen, her cane tapping lightly, her fingers steady as she poured tea. Ethan's footsteps paused at the doorway, his presence a shift in the air, cedar and steel mingling with the steam. "Morning," he said, his voice low, almost gentle, a crack in his usual frost. Lily turned, her head tilting. "Morning," she echoed, her smile small but real. She felt his gaze, not cold now, but searching, as if seeing her for the first time. The teacup moment lingered between them, unspoken, binding. Ethan lingered, leaning against the counter. "You're up early," he said, the words a bridge, tentative but open. "I don't sleep much," Lily said, her voice soft, steady. "The baby, it keeps me awake." Her hand brushed her belly, the gesture small, protective. Ethan's eyes followed, softening, a flicker of care, not duty. He stepped closer, his voice rough but kind. "Is it hard?" The question caught her off guard, raw, real. Lily's lips curved, her blind eyes unseeing but piercing. "Sometimes," she said, "but it's mine." The words landed, heavy, tying her to him, to the life they'd made. Seraphina's laughter sliced through, sharp as a blade, from the hall. She swept in, her perfume choking the air, her sun pendant glinting, a false star. "Ethan, you're wasting time," she said, her tone bright, brittle. Her eyes narrowed at Lily's glow, her hand on her belly. With her, Lily's fingers tightened on her necklace, her silence a shield. Ethan's jaw clenched, doubt flickering. Seraphina's stories felt hollow, her pendant a lie against Lily's quiet truth. "Enough," he said, sharp, stepping between them. Seraphina's smile faltered, her gaze venomous. Later in the parlor, Ethan sat with Lily, the air heavy with unspoken words. Lily overheard him mutter about Eleanor's prophecy, a riddle tying her to his past. "Tell me about her," Lily said, her voice soft, cutting. "Sunshine?" Ethan froze, the name a wound. He looked at her, her face open, her necklace glinting. "She was everything," he said, his voice breaking. "Her laugh, her songs. Then she was gone." His voice broke, the pain raw. Lily listened, her silence a balm, her necklace a mirror to his grief. "I don't remember much," she said, her voice a whisper. "But this," she touched her necklace, "feels like her." Ethan's chest tightened, her words weaving into his memories, her tune, her touch, a thread to sunshine he couldn't ignore. Serafina's malice grew, a shadow stalking. Late that night, in the dim stairwell, she cornered Lily, her voice a hiss. "You're nothing," she spat, her hands shoving hard. Lily stumbled, her cane clattering, her body tumbling down the stairs. Pain seared, sharp and endless as she crumpled, her hands clutching her belly, the life within slipping away. Ethan found her, his shout tearing the silence. He knelt, cradling her, her blood staining his hands, her face pale as moonlight. "Lily!" he choked, his voice raw, desperate. Her sobs were soft, shattering. "The baby," she whispered, the words a knife. Ethan held her, Serafina's lie unraveling in the wreckage. He carried her to the hospital, her weight light, fragile. Doctors moved fast, their voices clipped, but the truth was clear. The baby was gone. Ethan stood by her bed, seeing not a stranger, but Lily, the woman he'd failed. He saw the truth he'd missed, Serafina's cruelty bare, her pendant a forgery. Lily, the heart he'd sought. Lily stirred, her hand reaching, finding his. "Stay," she whispered, her voice weak but piercing. Ethan gripped her hand, his throat burning. "I'm here," he said, the words a vow, sealing his guilt, unveiling a deeper rift. Lily was the truth, not Serafina's ghost. The hospital's hum faded, Lily's sobs blending with a nightjar's call outside, carrying the story forward, a wound sealed, a truth laid bare. The hospital room was a cocoon of quiet, the hum of machines a soft pulse beneath the city's distant roar. Lily lay still, her face pale as moonlight filtering through the window, her hands folded over the blanket, her necklace at her throat. Ethan sat beside her, his chair creaking, his eyes fixed on her, raw with guilt. The loss of their child hung heavy, a wound shared in the silence, her blood still staining his memory. Serafina's face burned in his mind, her sharp smile, her false pendant, her hands pushing Lily down the stairs. Doubt had hardened into truth. She was no sunshine. He leaned forward, his voice rough, barely a whisper. "Lily, I'm sorry." The words felt small, but they spilled out, heavy as stones. Her eyes, unseeing but piercing, fluttered open, catching the weight of his tone. She said nothing, her fingers touching her necklace, as if it held her together. The silence stretched, a pause heavy with truth, carrying their grief. Ethan's hand settled on hers, warm, steady. "I should have seen it," he said, his throat tight. "Serafina, she lied. About everything." Lily's breath caught, a small sound in the vast room. "Her pendant," he continued, his voice breaking. "It's not hers, it's not Sunshine's." He touched his own sun pendant, its edges worn. "But yours." Lily's fingers tightened on her necklace, her voice soft, fragile. "What are you saying?" Her question pulled at the truth he'd danced around for weeks. The song, the pendants, her quiet presence, they wove into a memory. Sunshine, laughing in a sunlit field, her small hand in his, her necklace glinting, sun and moon entwined. Before dawn, Ethan faced Serafina in her sleek apartment, her forged pendant exposed. "You wanted my wealth," he said, her lies crumbling. "You're nothing," she spat, fleeing. A shadow burned away. The confrontation, sharp and final, cleared the fog, leaving only Lily's truth. Back in the hospital, Ethan knelt beside her, his voice urgent, soft. "Lily, that song you hum, it's hers, Sunshine's. I heard it years ago when we were kids." Her tune, Sunshine's, confirmed the truth. Lily's eyes widened, unseeing but searching, her hand gripping his. I don't remember," she said, her voice cracking. "But it feels like mine." The words landed, piercing, a truth half seen in dawn's light. Lily found Eleanor's letter among her things, read to her by a nurse, left by Eleanor before her passing. "Brenda took you after the crash, Sunshine, but I never forgot." It confirmed Eleanor's role in their reunion, her prophecy a thread pulling them together. The crash, a car accident on a rain-slick road, orphaning you, stole Lily's sight, her memories, and left her in Brenda's hands, who claimed her as her own, hiding her from those who searched. Ethan's chest tightened, the pieces falling into place. Brenda's theft, Eleanor's frail hope, the necklace kept like a secret. "Lily," he said, his voice low, "your necklace. It's hers, isn't it? Sunshine's." Her fingers stilled on her necklace, her breath slow, deliberate. It's mine, she said, soft but certain. It's always been mine. The words unraveled the ghost he'd chased. Lily was sunshine, her memories stolen by the crash, her life reshaped by Brenda's hands, by Eleanor's prophecy. Ethan's throat burned, his eyes stinging, not with joy but with a quiet ache, a path leading to an unexpected home. He stood pacing, the room too small for the storm in his chest. I have to find her, he said, his voice sharp. Serafina. Lily's head shook, small, firm. No, she said, her voice steady despite her frailty. Not her. Not now. Her words stopped him, a gentle command, pulling him back to the bed. Stay, she said, softer, her hand reaching, finding his again. Ethan sank into the chair, seeing Lily, her face pale but resolute, her strength quiet, her heart open. You were with me, he said, his voice breaking. All those years ago. You were her. Lily's face crumpled, a sob catching in her throat. I don't know, she whispered, but I feel it. In the song. Her hand tightened on his, their grief shared, raw, real. The hospital light flickered, the necklace catching it, a quiet emblem of their truth. Lily's voice was barely audible. What happens now, she asked, not to him, but to the quiet, to the truth between them. Ethan squeezed her hand, the gesture small but profound, a promise in the dark. I'm here, he said, his voice a vow, the room settling, the machine's hum a faint pulse. The city's hum faded, the moonlight softening, blending with a candle's flicker in the dawn, carrying the story forward, a truth found, a home unexpected. The penthouse balcony caught the first light of dawn, a soft glow spilling over the city's sharp edges. Lily sat in a wicker chair, her cane resting against the railing, her necklace glinting at her throat. Ethan stood nearby, his hands in his pockets, the cedar scent of him mingling with the morning air. The silence between them was warm, not heavy, like a hush before dawn. Their grief, for the child lost, for the years stolen, lingered, but it was shared, a quiet understanding woven through their days. Lily's fingers touched her necklace, its warmth a tether to a past she felt more than remembered. She hummed softly, her tune reclaimed, a melody threading through her heart. Ethan watched, his chest tight, seeing not the blind girl he'd married, but Lily, sunshine, the woman who'd slipped through his fingers, now here, breathing, real. You're humming again, he said, his voice low, a smile in it. She tilted her head, her lips curving. It's mine, she said, soft but sure. Always was. The words landed, light as a breeze, sealing a truth they both held. Ethan stepped closer, the city's hum distant, the world shrinking to the balcony, to them. He thought of Eleanor, gone now, her frailty claiming her letter revealing the prophecy as sunshine's return. Brenda's shadow, her theft of Lily after the crash, faded as did Serafina's lies, her forged pendant exposed, her flight a final unraveling. Lily's hand rested on the chair's arm, her necklace catching the dawn's glow. I used to think, she said, her voice a whisper, I'd never be seen. Not really. Ethan's throat burned, her words cutting deeper than he expected. He knelt beside her, his hand hovering, then settling near hers, close but not touching. I see you, he said, rough, raw. I always will. Her smile was small, piercing, her blind eyes unseeing but warm, as if she felt his gaze, his heart. Good, she said, the word a breath, a bridge. The air shifted, the dawn softening, the necklace glinting like a quiet star. Ethan saw their life, not whole, not healed, but shared. The child they'd lost was a scar, but Lily was here, her strength quiet, her heart open. He felt it, a tender dawn, not an answer, but enough. Do you ever wonder, Lily said, her voice soft, what we'd be if none of it happened? Ethan paused, the question sharp, gentle. He saw Sunshine's laugh, the field, the years without her, then Lily's face, her tune, her hand near his. No, he said, his voice steady. This is us. His words were a vow, small but true, like the necklace at her throat. Lily nodded, her fingers still on her necklace, her breath slow, even. The city stirred, but the balcony was theirs, a small world of light and quiet. Their hands stayed close, not touching, but near, a promise in the space between. The grief was there, the ache, but so was the dawn, soft, shared, like a folk melody fading into peace. The light grew, the necklace catching it, a quiet emblem of their truth. Ethan stood beside her, his heart steady, the world exhaling. They didn't speak, didn't need to. Their breathing, slow and matched, was enough, a rhythm carrying them forward into the quiet dawn. A finch's trill sounded nearby, faint but clear, resting with the story in the tender light. If this story moved you, if it reminded you that hope can be found in the most surprising moments, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Heartwarming Love Story. We bring you stories that touch the soul, renew your belief in kindness, and highlight what's truly important in life.